we have a new auction scheme coming in. So it means it's completely different from what we had before. So it's much more risk, and there will be much more work, homework for the investors, as well as for our TSO, for Litgrid, who will be responsible for integrating higher shares, higher volumes of wind. So I think these are the issues that we will have to discuss during our conference. And now we would like to ask our two presenters to come over. Can we have a few chairs here, please? Thank you. And if the audience has some questions before Minister and Mr. Chairman has to leave, so please shoot. If not, Derek, maybe you and I can just have a few questions before the audience gets there ready.
So please feel free to ask questions now. We got about 20 minutes for it, so, and after that there is a coffee break. So the speakers are yours now.
Please. Okay, then I have one question then. During this 2 years of discussions about the strategy, we had a few drafts that were coming out. The first one said that we 100% of renewables. Then the second one was 80% of renewables, and then again it was 100% of renewables. So, Minister and Mr. Chairman, what made you finally, what made you convinced that it should be 100% renewables?
Well, I think it's very clear that we have to have very clear vision for the long-term future, mid-2050, and this was not something like inventing a bicycle. I mean that 100% of renewables in 2050. This is more or less a general trend. Just we confirmed this by the draft of the strategy. Of course, always when you are discussing and the strategy projects, it takes time and takes time also and needs some compromises. So just to echo one important fact that the strategy was prepared by the 5 months, but then we spent about 1 year for the discussions. I mean, the discussions with the public, with the society, with the associations. Of course, to have very not only a compromise solution, but I should call like a national agreement. And I think that this was also confirmed by the Parliament, because this was I don't remember the clear words about the strategy, but more or less this was by the absolute majority, more or less by 100% voted for the strategy. So it means that we had this and we have the strategy like a national agreement. So that's important fact. Concerning these numbers, I would say very clearly that the key aspect and the key target for us now should be 2030 to go forward towards this direction. And the clarity is very important here. About the vision 2050, politically nice to have 100%, but in case it will be 95. I think nobody will be care so much about this. So this is very clear that in principle it's not so much important. It's 180 or 90% in 2050. It's very important that we have a very clear track how we are going forward towards 2030. And for that, for 2030, we have about half of all the consumption going from the renewables. So that's for sure.
Just a couple of sentences. Yeah, just to add what Minister said. So, of course, we haven't calculated exactly. Yes, we know that there are formula, there are data, and we know 100% in 2050. So it's a vision, it's a target to be achieved. But we are not unique as a country with such ambition. There are more countries. So, and I believe there will be mainstream, if you talk about other countries, to put such ambition on their strategic plans.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the floor? but perhaps I'll ask the warming up question and then I give it to you. With going around the world with these conferences, we have them for the last 10 years in many, many countries. And many countries that we visited were in the past or are now pretty much at the same stage Lithuania is with wind energy now. I would like to ask you if you could name the most difficult factor that could be potentially detrimental to the development on wind in Lithuania. What is the toughest task you have to face?
I think that's this was also raised by the chairman of the commission, that we have to align two very important projects, two very important ambitions, practical ambitions, and on which this is not only a vision but our practical steps. This is the development of renewables, development of the wind power, and also the synchronization project. Meaning the capacities, the system stability, all these some sort of the questions, which is of course very important also from the technical perspective. We have these two questions answered. So here it could be, for the longer term future. But currently, I would like to assure that of course we have just going back when the strategy was birthed. I mean, that from 2012 to 2016, it was a lot of discussions about the need to prepare a new strategy. And at that time, we had the number of talking about the megawatts, about 250 additional potential megawatts which could be installed in the system, not harming the system. So this was the project. With this new strategy, 2.5 terawatt hours of the renewables. This is not particularly for the wind power, but in principle for this sort of generation. We are calculating that this could be about more or less about 400 or 500 of the megawatts. So it means that the strategy expanded these capacities. And the question is how much the network is capable to meet these new developments. I would like to assure that from one perspective, this is very clear that about 250, 300 megawatts, that's for sure, and it will be easily adopted and entered for the network, and this is visible. Of course, now we are on the very important track that we are working with the NSOE, and the NSOE, the Association of the Transmission System Operators, is now producing the catalog of measures for our synchronization with the continental European network. So on that, we are expecting, and we have the target, a very clear target, that this catalog of measures should be prepared by the beginning of April. So at that time, I see that we will be in a comfort to say that first 250, that's easily going to the network, that's feasible. The next question is about how much of additional capacities could be met. And that's the third argument, that's the schedule for all these options will be also prepared and will be adopted when we will have the first option. It means that for the investors, it's really clear that we will have the instrument how to manage this potential additional capacities, having in mind our ambition targets for the development of renewables. So to say it clearly that it will be probably the challenge and the issue and the target for our TSO. I see there are representatives from the TSO to keep these figures, keep this demand, but also I would like to say that we are in a quite good comfort to say that this 2.5 terawatt hours is feasible to be installed, and this is in line, not harming the synchronization project.
The same. Yeah, the greatest challenge is desynchronization from Russian system and synchronization with the European continental network. Why? Because now our small system, the primary reserves and stability is provided by a Russian system. So they care about primary reserve. And while we disconnecting and desynchronizing from Braille ring or Russian system, we will be in charge of primary reserve and in charge of keeping our system stable. And while at the same time we add more and more and more wind to our system, it's a challenge to keep 50 Hz stable. That's why I'm talking about maybe could wind developers could provide solutions to add to stability, not to be just users of grid and system, but providers of stability.
We will have
that was my second.
Yeah, we will have later on a presentation from Elegrid from Ireland, where they actually dealt with it beautifully, and that's why we invited them. However, the sort of part which I didn't pronounce perhaps so well, you said that it will be zero subsidy or near zero subsidy, and infrastructure projects like wind projects are not the cheapest in the world. So how do you feel secure that investment will come and that development come? The question is the law for investment also being implemented and very clear to investors, especially from the outside of Lithuania, to convince them to invest their money in wind energy projects here?
I think first message is very clear that we have very clear plans. This is a message for the investor that we have very clear plans, very clear vision, that we will have very clear schedule how we are moving with these developments. That's the first issue and the first message. The second message is this is about the stability of the system, and probably the key question for the investors is to have the guarantees for the long term. This is not the question per se to have larger revenues with the risk during the short term, but for the reliable scheme for the long term, for the 12 years. And I think that we have all the elements, all the components to make this attractive. Of course, as I said, the regulator will approve the ceilings for this. But that's the key things why we can be in an advantage position to attract the investors. And of course, in the market, what we see we see more and more possibilities and more synergy between the wind power, solar power, and there are more and more incentives also to have cooperation schemes and so on. So that's about this question, but also just jumping to the synchronization question. One important message to think that synchronization should be also treated not only as a challenge, but also like the opportunity. And here, like additional incentive for the investors. And here I will put a very small example. How the synchronization project, how this political compromise was achieved. I'm referring to not only to the onshore wind development, but also to the offshore. And as you know, the synchronization project is from the current existing power line between Lithuania and Poland. And very important element, this is undersea cable between Poland and Lithuania. And this is really the synergy, this is the potential synergy also to connect to the grid using this cable, also the offshore wind farms. That's very important, and I think that this is also one of the key arguments for our future to minimize the costs while connecting these wind farms, because that's the key strategy also looking from the European Commission, that this project should be supported by the EU financing. And politically and technically it will be also easier for us to have the best possible financing from the EU if we can show this synergy of synchronization and renewables going together.
Please, the audience, any questions? Yes.
Hello, my name is Ilsha Bajret. I'm from Lithuanian Energy Institute. Thank you for your presentations. And my question I could split in two parts. The first one, how do you think when it could be reasonable to renew, to revise the existing Lithuanian energy strategy if Lithuania is doing on the business as usual? And the second part, what could be circumstances or reasons to revise the strategy when we are pushed to revise the strategy as soon as we can? How do you think?
Very interesting question. I'm just referring to the year of 2012 when the last strategy was adopted. So after half a year, all the talks were started about the need to renew the strategy. So I think, to put it shortly, we have a lot to do to implement this strategy. And this is the reason that just at the beginning of December last year, 2018, in the government we adopted the implementation plan for the strategy. This really means that the strategy is not only a theoretical document, but we have also the practical instrument how to implement. We have 128 measures, instruments, which should be necessary to be implemented. So currently, I don't feel a need to renew the strategy, having in mind that we really invested a lot towards this strategy, and of course, always, in case there will be a will from the Parliament, we can be open to discuss the things which should be renewed. But I think that now we have to concentrate on the implementation of the current existing strategy.
For me, the normal cycle of revisiting strategies could be 5 or 4 years. So I think it's a normal cycle. But keeping in mind how fast technologies are evolving, I think we will need to revise in 4 or 5 years. And keeping in mind the synchronization project is not only Lithuanian, it's also regional. It could be some, or maybe some corrections maybe will be necessary. But it's a minor problem, of course. But the essence, the speed of new technologies which are coming.
Anyone else? Yes, please.
Thank you. My name is Gregory Detian from Naturapar. I've noticed that you highlighted that the auction that you plan to run later on this year will be technically neutral. One of the risks with this kind of thing is that, for example, in the country I work from the UK, there's been examples of first auctions where solar projects have bid at very low price, which were speculatively low by these developers, and these projects afterwards never got realized, and obviously have taken some slots from other projects. So I wonder whether you have something planned for the design of the auctions that would remedy that problem and avoid speculative applications.
Good question, thank you for this. And of course, first start is that the technological neutrality is the things which is very important to start these developments. And of course, it will be very interesting to see the results of the auctions. And but I do hope that the market what we have now, and we are on the quite good starting positions currently, having in mind that there are some projects which will be going forward just a little bit later, I mean in 2022 or 2023. So now from the competition point of view, we are feeling that this is a good momentum to have these auctions right now, right here, this year. On these guarantees, on these safeguards, as you said, to have the reliability and to have that the price which was proposed, this project will be really implemented here. Of course, I'm looking towards our regulator. Of course, they have a lot of instruments how to ensure that that the prices which was approved, which was proposed, that these projects should be implemented. And of course, in the law we also have some safeguards, some guarantees that once you are beating the auction, then you have to install and you have to implement the project. So we are on the quite